Hello and welcome to SpyMaster's podcast. I'm Agent Scott.
And I'm Cam the Provocateur, regrettably seeking refuge in a telephone box.
Are there any tapestries in there?
There are, and they're quite lovely.
I've heard. That's why I've come to this castle. Oh wait, it's a phone box. I'm just lost.
In a phone box.
Yeah, this might be a TARDIS. We're getting our metaphors all
Oh.
mixed up here.
Oh my god, we've just connected 3 credits in one go here.
Yeah, we did. Well done, everyone. That's the end of the podcast. Thanks for tuning in.
Condorman. There's 4.
Just shout it out.
Yeah.
Well, we're back continuing our celebration of The Spy Who Loved Me, 1977's seminal Roger Moore James Bond film, The Spy Who Loved Me, with our second SpyMaster interview. And Cam, who do we have joining us?
We are joined by Vernon Dobtcheff, who played Max Kalba in The Spy Who Loved Me, the unfortunate second victim of Jaws, there in the phone box, the man staring in absolute horror as Jaws leans in with his deadly bite. And of course, Dobtcheff is also someone who is in a lot of other spy movies. So we're going to talk Condorman, Day of the Jackal, Assassination Bureau, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and more.
Yeah, quite the curriculum vitae for this man, I would say. And he's got a hell of a lot of stories to tell. And I'll also add, first of all, I hope everyone's enjoying this massive bumper Spy Who Loved Me month. If you're not at this point, I don't know. We've committed now. What can I do?
Yeah, they're sitting at home going, everybody does it better.
Yeah, they probably do. But yeah, we love this film and we hope you do too. And I think getting these opportunities to talk to these people is enriching for the film. I think you can do a review, you can do an 18-hour review of The Spy Who Loved Me if you want, but I think the real stories come from the people that made the film, and so this is why we put this month together. And also, we're cruising towards our 5th birthday, so it's a big celebration here on Spy Hards, and we hope you're enjoying the discussion. And I'll also add, this is Vernon Dobtcheff's first ever podcast appearance.
That's right. Yeah. And so this is a big deal.
So from Valerie Leon last week, Valerie to this, 2 first timers, and we might have some more coming up. But without further ado, let's take a bite out of this interview. Okie dokie, folks. We are celebrating Spy Who Loved Me this month, and that gives me the unique pleasure of introducing our guest. He was once called the patron saint of the acting profession. He's worked with the likes of Richard Burton, Laurence Olivier, Sean Connery, Harrison Ford, Roger Moore. He's got close to 400 credits to his name. Joining us this week is the one and only Vernon Dobtcheff. Hello, sir. How are you?
Well, I'm very well. Alas, I didn't work with Sir Lawrence. He was very kind to me. I knew of him, but I never worked with him. I was going to be in a film called A Little, I can't remember what, in Venice. And then another film I was in overran. So I didn't actually work with him.
I will take that feedback straight to IMDb because I got that information from there. So I will take my complaint to them for giving you an improper intro.
All right.
It's a pleasure to have you here, and we're celebrating The Spy Who Loved Me this month, which sort of is the beginning of this conversation. So I guess we'll start with Bond because all things on this show seem to lead to Bond. Before The Spy Who Loved Me came along for you, were you aware of the sort of Bond phenomena that sort of started in the 60s before that film?
Oh, yes, of course. I'd seen all the films, yes.
And were you a particular fan of any of the films at all?
Oh, I thought Sean was very good. When I came to be in it, it was with Roger Moore, who was a dear man. I can't remember quite how I came. What year was it? Do you remember which year it was?
1977, the movie was released.
77. Well, that's why. That answers my question, because I had already worked with Lewis Gilbert, the director, a dear, dear man and a wonderfully, wonderfully accomplished director. I'd worked with him in Prague in a film about Heydrich with some very good actors, Timothy Bottoms and Anthony Andrews and Martin Shaw and Joss Ackland and sweet Nicola Paget. And Lewis was the director. And thereafter, he asked me to be in the Bond film, in The Spy Who Loved Me. And he had intended me to be in a part that was going to be shot in Egypt. And that pleased me very much because I had at that time not been to Egypt. And then I couldn't because another film I was committed to clashed with those dates. So I said, I'm terribly sorry, I can't be in it. He said, oh, we'll get you in somewhere. And a result of which I was allowed to play Max Kalba in those scenes with Roger and Miss Bach we did them in Pinewood.
Oh, interesting. I wonder if I don't know if you'd remember if you were originally going to be Jaws's first victim and wound up being his second.
Possibly. I don't know. I can't remember now. I don't have I saw the film a long time ago. I don't have any clear recollection now of what was shot in Egypt. I know I've been to Egypt since, so it was not a problem as far as that was concerned, but I was disappointed at the time. But it was a great pleasure to be with Roger and Miss Bach and Jaws, dear Richard Keel, in Pinewood Studios for 3 days or whatever it was.
And just jumping off of the Lewis Gilbert question, I was just checking it. It was Operation Daybreak was the film you were in.
That's right. Yes.
Before. Yeah, I thought so.
Yes.
Just checking
it changed title. I think it was known at one point as 7 Men at Daybreak, and then it was called Operation Daybreak. Yes. There's some very good actors in it.
Yeah, I was just looking through. It's got quite the caliber. It's actually also somewhat spy themed, which is our specialty on Spy Hard's podcast. So that's something we'll have to check out because it's got more Vernon, so we'll definitely get to see that one.
There's not much of me left in that, I think, but I did have the pleasure of working for dear Lewis and with all those excellent actors. Anton Differing played Heydrich, as I remember, a very good actor. And I didn't work with him on the film, but of course he was there in the Barandov studios in Prague.
Well, I guess that's a good jumping off point with Lewis Gilbert and the connective tissue between those two films. What was he like to work for as a director? Because you've worked for some of the greats when it comes to directing. What was Lewis Gilbert's sort of speciality like when it comes to directing?
He was a joy because he was, first of all, a very warm, considerate, kind human being. And the second thing was that he had worked his way up in the film industry from being a T-boy, and he'd been through all the departments of filmmaking. And every time someone in the crew came to him and said, oh, I don't know, Governor, I don't think we can do this. I don't think we can. He said, well, now, if you tried that, and then possibly this, and then possibly that, try that and see if it works. And it always did, because he knew. And they said, oh, yeah, Governor, yeah, you know, yes. And so it was, and he knew about actors too. I don't know if he'd ever acted in a film, but his brother-in-law was a good actor called Sidney Tafler. And he was not a Cinematheque name as a director, but to me, he was a totally accomplished director, knowledgeable and very humane and kind.
And it's interesting, when we talk about you getting the job, you say, the Lewis Gilbert connection. But I was curious about Cubby Broccoli. That was the first film he produced solo. If you had any memories of him.
I don't think I ever met him.
Interesting.
He was in the firmament of James Bond, but I don't think I was only on the studio floor for about 3 or 4 days, and I was due to go off to Spain to do another film, so I couldn't linger, unfortunately, and I never met Mr. Broccoli. No.
Isn't it funny that in a career as expansive as yours, and a film that you spent, as you say, 3 to 4 days perhaps working on, it has perhaps had a legacy bigger than films you spent months upon months, epics filming, and people are still talking to you about something like The Spy Who Loved Me or, say, The Last Crusade, for instance. It's the magic of these sorts of films. I
know. I feel very lucky to have been fractionally part of them. No, I spent months on various films like The Name of the Rose with Sean and Christian Slater and all those very good actors, or mostly very good actors. And one or two no, there was one actor in it who was acting for the he wasn't acting for the camera, he was acting for the crew. And he didn't quite get the right dimensions, I think, or in the interiority of the performance. But most of them were very good actors, and I was lucky to work with them.
As something you observed that on the film, and I know we're talking about Bond, we'll come back to that. But as an actor working with another actor who's clearly having a bit of a bad time with that, what do you tend to try and do? Do you like to help your other actor and give them notes, or do you find it best to let them get on with their own performance?
Oh, no, never, never, never. I would never give notes to another actor. No, one just tries to, if one is on the set with them and they happen to look at one, then one tries to look back at them in character. One or two actors, not many, but whom I didn't particularly wish to look at, and was quite glad when they were, well, didn't bother to turn up for the reverse shot or whatever. But no, I wouldn't dream of giving notes to anyone. And I can't recall ever an actor asking me, what do I do here? I think probably I would have answered, I'm so privileged to be in your company, but that is your problem.
It's quite the professional answer, really, because ultimately you're trying to do your best with the material that you're given. And speaking of doing your best with the material that you're given, going back to Bond, and we'll talk about Roger Moore in just a second, but Richard Kiel is obviously playing a big part of your time with 007. Big being the optimum word.
He was such a dear man. He was a dear, sweet, kind man, and he just had a child. I think a little boy, or possibly, I can't remember what sex the child was, but Richard was huge, enormous, and he was on set when he wasn't called to act. He was carrying this tiny baby in his arms, and it was so touching. Poor Richard, he hated wearing the metallic teeth, which were his trademark in the film. And he kept on saying to Louis, can I take him out? Can I take him out? No, Richard, keep them in a bit more, and a bit more. But he was kindness as a man and as an actor, kindness personified. And when he had to bite me to death, I did say, you will be very considerate, won't you, Richard, because I have continuity for something else. And he said, and he was. No, he was a dear, dear, kind man. And I grieved when I heard of his passing, because he was a warm human being, you know. And I, obviously, growing up, he must have had all sorts of problems with his height and everything, but he was a dear human being.
That scene where he bites you is legendary. Yeah. I saw it probably at the age of 10, and it haunted me. And a big part of that is the look on your face as the camera is zooming in, the look of absolute horror. And, you know, a sequence like that, it's obviously the atmosphere created by the director and what have you, but like the look on your face sells it so effectively. How do you kind of sell that, like, and make that work so incredibly well?
Well, because the character is rather horrified, and even the actor was thinking, is he going to bite too deep? But he didn't.
I was going to ask about the character of Max Kalba, because classic Bond, you know, you have a character who shows up, you know, for a scene or two and leaves a huge impression. And I thought, you know, obviously there's the style to that, and there's also the accent that you find for that character, like the voice, that kind of dry delivery that's so interesting in contrast to kind of the charm of Roger Moore. How did you happen upon that voice?
Well, I can't remember now. It was quite a few years ago. But I tried, well, I mean, if there's something like that to be found, I try something and wait for the director to stop me or change me, and he didn't. So I carried on. I don't actually think, I haven't seen the film for a long time, but I don't think I was as good in it as I could have been in those scenes. And I regret it now. I can't remember why I wasn't, but I remember I caught the scene somewhere in some show, and I thought, oh, I could have done that better. But it's done. Too late.
To be fair, in the space of about 5 minutes, you get to have a tete-a-tete with Roger Moore and then get killed by Jaws. So I think you did pretty well with your time. Many actors that appear in Bond films would wish they could get killed by the likes of Jaws.
Oh, he was wonderful. And Roger was such a dear man. I had worked with him before in a couple of television programs.
Mm-hmm.
Can't remember which now.
The Saint was one of them.
Oh, yes, that's right. And another one. And he was such a dear, kind man, and relaxed and humane and humorous. I didn't really get to know Miss Bach. She was very easy on the eye, and it was very nice to sit opposite her. But I couldn't get to know her. But Roger was enchanting.
Well, we've spoken to a lot of people over the years, and we've done interviews with people that have been in Bond films and other films with Roger Moore, and I've never heard a bad story about the man, and I think that's probably because there aren't any.
No, I doubt if there are.
Yeah. So could you just maybe tell us some of what your experiences were like with him on set? Did you get much time to spend and talk to him whilst you were doing The Spy?
No, not a great deal. Lewis was he worked fast as a director, and there wasn't much time for chat on the set. But every exchange we had was very friendly, and he was kindness itself. And it was a great pleasure being in his company. That's all I can tell you, really.
And the movie became a huge phenomenon. And, you are someone who's very prolific. You are working job to job to job. How aware were you of just what an explosion that movie was at the time?
Well, one doesn't think of it like that. I mean, I felt very fortunate to be in one of the Bond franchises and to be working with Roger and Miss Bach and dear Richard. But at the time, one just thinks, I hope I can deliver what kind Lewis has entrusted me with. Mm-hmm. I didn't know I was probably the 29th choice. I very often am. But I didn't know that. I was confronted with just trying to play the scene. I didn't think about exposure and all that sort of thing, no. Nor indeed was Stephen in Indiana Jones. That part of it was not, when one is on the set with a fine director and good actors, all one tries to do is to deliver with one's own truth what the character asks for. And sometimes you succeed and sometimes you don't. Alas.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's actually perhaps a good segue. We'll start to come away from Bond and go on and talk about Indiana Jones there. But one thing I was sort of curious about wrapping the Bond side of things up is, of all of the films you've worked on, and I say close to 400 credits, is Bond the one you get asked about the most, or is it Doctor Who, or is it Indiana Jones? What's that sort of lightning rod film for you?
Asked about, yes. I think it's either Bond or Indiana Jones. And indeed, the Doctor Who fans, I was very briefly in Doctor Who for 3 episodes. And I, alas, lost a John Huston film because of that, because Mr. Huston had cast me in a film of his called The Kremlin Letter. And I was to be in Rome acting with George Sanders and Max von Sydow. I later did work with Max, and he became a friend. George Sanders, alas, I never met. And I had been doing an Ibsen play in just outside London, and I was offered 3 weeks in Doctor Who. And my darling mother had just gone into a rather expensive nursing home, so I thought I'd better do this. I had nothing against Doctor Who, but normally I wouldn't have taken another job just before Mr. Huston's. And then, so I agreed and signed the contract. And the next day, the casting director, Mr. Huston's casting director, called up and said, "Can you go out to Rome tomorrow? Because Mr. Huston has brought your dates forward." And alas, I couldn't. So although I had the great pleasure of spending an hour with John at the Connaught Hotel, I never got to be on his film set. And I really regretted that.
It's actually interesting you bring up the Kremlin letter, because on the show we talk about spy movies, not just Bond. We celebrate spy movies, and
Yes.
Kremlin letter was one we actually looked at last year. I didn't know you had a connection to it. I'm in my head trying to figure out what character you could have played. Now it's rattling around.
I can't. I think. I think he was a gay character in a green sweater, as I remember. Well, at least when I saw the film, and I honestly can't remember it very well. I seem to remember he's a young actor. I think a gay actor. I mean, John, I think, cast me to be a gay man in a green sweater. Or maybe the costume designer decided on the green sweater. I'm afraid I can't remember the name of the actor who played the part, but alas, I wasn't in it.
I think I know. I don't know the name of the character, but I think you would have been partnered up with George Sanders a lot in the finished film if it had been that way.
I wish I had been, because I admired him enormously as an actor. And I thought his passing was dreadful. You know, he said, "Goodbye, cruel world," in some hotel in Barcelona, I think. Oh, awful. Fine actor. And in All About Eve, he's extraordinary.
Oh.
But not only in that, in Rebecca, in so many films.
We've covered him many times on the show because he did a lot of spy films through the 40s, especially.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Fine actor, but a melancholy man, I gather.
Well, let's jump into Indiana Jones just a little bit there, because there is some spy movie connective tissue with those films, and again, you're surrounded by these greats alongside yourself, but of Harrison Ford, Alison Doody, Steven Spielberg is directing. You've got quite the cavalcade of characters around you. What was that very brief scene, quite iconic Indiana Jones scene, like to shoot, and how was Harrison to work with as well?
Oh, he was a delight, and so was Stephen. It was a curious event in my life. I had been with my two darling godsons, who were quite small, to see E.T., I think, because they wanted to, 9 times. So I was very fond of E.T. They were. That was good.
Very good.
And I was asked to go and meet Mr. Spielberg in the West End, in a rather grand hotel room. And I mentioned the E.T. thing, and we talked about that, and he talked about my godsons. He didn't mention the film project at all, nothing about it, but we had about an hour's conversation, and he was very kind and friendly and delighted. And I was very happy to meet him, but I left his company without any idea of what the film he was doing, what the part he might be thinking of, nothing. And I'd barely got home when my agent called saying, "Steven Spielberg absolutely wants you to be in his film. He absolutely wants you." So I said, "Well, that's very nice. To do what?" "Oh, we don't know yet," and so on. And I was due to do a film in Italy with Marcello Mastroianni for a very fine director called Ettore Scola. And then I was given some dates for Stephen, and it turned out that I would be required for 1 or 2 days, not more. And then I was sent some pages, and it was a major domo. And I thought, anybody, any actor, any age, sex, and size could play this part. Why me? And as my dates with Ettore Scola got nearer and nearer, I told my agent to tell them, "I'm sorry, I won't be able to do Mr. Spielberg's film." And they, no, you absolutely have got to be in it. You've got to be in it. You've got to be in it. And I thought, but anybody can play this part. I mean, I was delighted he wanted me, but I couldn't understand why. And then when we came to shoot the film, I did understand why, because there was a moment when Harrison and Alison Doody came in to this castle, and I was greeted them, and as the major domo, and I can't remember what preceded it, but I know that my final line to Harrison was, "If you are Scottish Lord, then I am Mickey Mouse." And at which point Harrison punched me, and I slipped to the ground. And I think now that's all that's left in the film. However, on the set, that was not all that was left. Harrison had to carry me all round the set at Stephen's direction for a day and a half, stopping at various points in the set, with me still on his shoulders. And I said, Harrison, I'm so sorry. If I'd known this, I wouldn't have had any breakfast. And he was so kind and patient with it. And then eventually Stephen said, and then you get there and you stop there and you set Vernon vertical. And so he stood me up, still unconscious and knocked out. And beside me, there was a mummy's case, sort of, what are they called? Catafalques, are they? Anyway, not quite that. Anyway, a case for a mummy. And Stephen said, you will put Vernon into that case and close the door. And Harrison did. And when he slammed the door, the mummy's case had exactly my profile, like that. And that is why he didn't want another actor to play the part. None of this is still, I think if you look closely on the set now, you can see it standing at the back. But all the poor Harrison's work dragging me around the set is no longer left. And I think, as far as I remember, my participation ends when he punches me and I slide to the floor.
That's right.
But for a day and a half, Harrison very patiently carried me around.
Wow.
I mean, you two must have had some very long conversations in between shots of him carrying you around. That must have been quite the partnership for a day and a half or so.
No, not very long conversations. Stephen worked very fast. And, I mean, very friendly exchanges, but there wasn't much time for chat.
Sure.
And then on the last day, Stephen said, you're working in Italy, aren't you? What are you going to do? When do you... I gather you got to leave at lunchtime. And I said, well, yes, I must, because I have a plane to go to Rome to work with Ettore Scola and Marcello Mastroianni, and I really mustn't miss it. And he said, you will get your plane. I am sending a car to Heathrow to pick up Sean, who is joining us. So the car that will take him back to us will take you to Heathrow, which is what happened. I had a quick hug with Sean because I'd worked with him in The Name of the Rose. And then I went to Rome and was picked up and taken to this mountain vacation between Rome and Naples. And the first thing I saw was a French-Russian actress called Marina Vladi in profile, like a ship's prow. And we were introduced. And I said, what are you waiting for? And she said, I am waiting for my ex-minister. And it turned out she was having an affair with a very distinguished doctor who had been a French minister of health for, 1 week or something. And then the government changed and he was no longer a minister. So she was waiting for him. But the work with Ettore Scola was a joy. And Marcello Mastroianni was a joy, though he tended to sort of pretend to be asleep on the set and only woke up when women were mentioned, or food was mentioned, or Chekhov was mentioned. And then he was totally awake and a dear man.
I can definitely understand that vibe, at least when it comes to food.
Yes. Oh, yes.
That definitely piques my interest.
Oh, yes.
Any good food.
Yes, well, he loved pasta and Marcello loved food, yes. And he still kept his line.
I wish I could say the same.
Look all right to me.
There is... Well, thank you, sir. Thank you. There is another, because you talk about Sean Connery, connective tissue there with those films you were in. Roger Moore, you worked with him several times. Another name that sprung out to me when I was sort of looking through films I've seen you in over the years and watched you in, and that is Oliver Reed.
Ah, a dear man. Oliver is in my heart. He really is. I first worked with him in a Ken Russell film about Debussy, which was Oliver was immaculate in it, and very good, as I remember. But Ken, who was a dear but eccentric director, once asked me to do something so improbable. And I turned to the actor who was sitting next to me, who was a Polish actor called Wladek Szebal, and I said to Wladek, you have worked with Ken before. I feel this is so wrong for my character and everything. Should I do it or should I question it? And Wladek said, Vernon, it is your problem. You do whatever you like, but don't forget one thing. Every director has an inferiority complex, and most particularly television directors. I was not conscious that Ken at any moment had an inferiority complex. Anyway, it was a joy to work with Oliver in that, and I later worked with him in a film called The Assassination Bureau by Basil Dearden, with dear Diana Rigg and Kurt Jurgens and Telly Savalas and Philippe Noiret, and which was a joy, which we did in Venice and other places. And Oliver, at all times, as far as I never remained on the set after 6 p.m. So I didn't join in any drinking, which I think he indulged in afterwards. But on the set, he was totally punctual, knew his words perfectly, was immaculate as a leading actor and as a colleague. And I think of him with love, because I can't fault him in any way.
Well, it's interesting. I rewatched the Assassination Bureau scene with Diana Rigg.
Yes.
And a lovely little scene between the two of you. And then Oliver Reed just appears from the rafters and kicks you off the screen, which I think is quite a lovely little shot there. I found that to be quite fun.
Oh, Oliver was a dear, yes. Yes, as I remember, I drowned in the canal in Venice. And it was quite I can't remember how much of it is left now, but playing it with Diana was a great delight. And just before we shot the last bit, an assistant director said, "Oh, we just ought to ruffle the water a bit more, because the light will dance on the water." So they did that, and I fell into the water and all that. And 3 months later, I was called to Pinewood Studios at 8:30 in the morning to revoice that scene. And Diana had gone off to New York to do something, and it was cold and it was all that. And I said, "Why are we doing this?" And the quiet voice said, "Sometimes, Mr. Dobtcheff, it's possible to improve a performance in ADR." And I said, "Yes, I know. And does mine need improving?" "No," he said, "no, you're fine. But some idiot ruffled the water just before we shot that. And the noise means that we have to reach it." So there we are.
They tried for an artistic little touch and didn't quite work there.
Yes. But it was a joy working with Diana and with all of them. And Telly Savalas was such a dear man. And, well, they all were.
And a movie that Oliver Reed was in, but you didn't work with him, was Condorman. And I was curious if you had any memories of, I guess, working with Michael Crawford on Condorman.
Oh, Michael Crawford was enchanting. I had worked with Michael before on the television in his famous series, Some Mothers Do Have Them. And he was enchanting to work with. But it was very difficult because his whole attitude was to try and make me laugh when I wasn't supposed to, as the character I was playing. So much so that when we came to do the actual shoot in the television studio, I lied and pretended to have very bad flu. And I said to Michael, I will do the scene, of course, because I'm engaged to do it, but I'm so ill that just let me get through it, because otherwise I'm going to collapse and it won't happen. And he said, "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that." And he didn't. He spared me. He didn't try to make me laugh. And that's how I got through the scene. But he was a joy, Michael. And I can't remember whether I acted with him in, or overacted with him, or underacted with him in well, you never know, you see. Sometimes, alas, well, I've always tried to underact, but sometimes I'm afraid I've overacted. Condorman, I don't remember much about it. It was directed by Charles Jarrett, who was the kindest of men.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd already worked with him 3 times in Mary Queen of Scots with Vanessa and Glenda Jackson and many fine actors, Patrick McGowan, etc. And in what was the other one? Oh, Man of a Thousand Days with Richard and Geneviève Bujold and Irene Papas.
Yeah.
And also a television thing in Yorkshire with Hugh Grant and various people. So, and I'd worked with him on the television in London in Galileo, the Brecht place. So Charles had kindly employed me again and again. And so when he said 3 days in Morocco for Condorman, I said, of course, Charles, anything for you, but I can't remember much about it.
Yeah, it was like a Russian agent character, and I believe Michael Crawford was sort of dressed as a, I think, like Slavic beggar or homeless
Probably,
man in the
yes.
scene. Yeah, yeah.
I think you also shared the scene with Barbara Carrera.
The lovely Barbara Carrera, yes. I worked with her also again in a film in Israel, Masada, a long television film with Peter O'Toole. She was a very lovely woman.
A previous guest on this show as well. She's still lovely to this day. We're big fans of Barbara.
How is she? Is she well?
She's living life, enjoying herself in Los Angeles.
Are we surprised?
Not particularly, but she's a very happy lady, so we'll take that.
I'm glad, yes.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special report.
Agents, we don't expect you to talk. We expect you to buy a subscription to our Patreon.
Yee. That's right. Over on the Spy Hards Patreon, we're covering all your favorite spy TV shows, as well as popular films from the most iconic secret agent actors of all time.
Cam, why don't you share some intel on our latest assignment?
Scott, for this month's On the Small Screen, we are looking at the 1989 espionage thriller Red King, White Knight, starring Tom Skerritt, Max von Sydow, and Helen Mirren. Will it earn the Hidden Gem TV movie crown? Or are we going to look like fools for giving it our time? We're going to find out.
So, tune your dial to patreon.com/spyhards and spice up your podcast feed.
But before Nick Knack runs out of Tabasco, resume the Spy Jinx. Well, a movie I wanted to ask about was The Day of the Jackal.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, it's a small part, but that scene, you can just feel it when you watch it, that interrogation scene. I was wondering if you had any memories of working on that film and working with Fred Zinnemann.
Well, indeed. Fred Zinnemann was a master filmmaker, and he was a very warm and kind human being. So it was a great joy being on his set. What you see, and I haven't seen it for a long time, what you see is a very tiny fragment of what we actually shot. And the scene was very disturbing, and a lot of physical pain was involved and suggested. And the producer said, no, we've got to cut this back. We've got to cut this back, which means that there's very little left of my contribution. I think I was torturing a nice French actor called Jean Martin, as I remember. And I can't remember. It was only a couple of days. But I can't remember. I was asked to re-record quite a lot of dialogue, which finally was not used. And they said, oh, you don't have to come in. We'll get another actor for that. And I called Fred and I said, you know, it has been such a privilege being in your film. Even if I'm off screen, whatever, I don't want to be replaced by another actor. And he said, no, of course, you must come into the studio, and we'll do it. And we did it. And it was a long and very painful scene to watch. And of course, they cut most of it.
Yeah. And I was wondering, you know, when you're playing a role like that, are you someone who does research? Were you looking into like interrogation at all? Or do you mostly like look at the script and work with that?
Tends to be look at a script and work with that. I mean, it depends what the part is. Mm-hmm. When I played whatever he was called, the Spanish ambassador in Anne of a Thousand Days, then I did research the man. But ultimately, the director is left with the actor he's cast. which maybe the 28th choice or 29th was me. And so one tried to use one's own truth. But no, in the torture scene, I just tried to respond to what the script was and what were Fred's very, very precise indications, which I can't remember now. But that is the answer.
Yeah. And it is like when you watch that scene, even though it's short, you can like feel that room. Like you could feel the heat.
Yeah.
Was it like an uncomfortable set, or is this just a case of, the magic of filmmaking makes it feel uncomfortable?
No, I don't recall it being an uncomfortable set. I think there was quite a lot of, I can't remember who the lighting cameraman on it was. I should have remembered. But I think they put a lot of smoke in to make it look atmospheric, which is fine, but not always sometimes comfortable to be with on the set. But no, it wasn't. The set in itself wasn't uncomfortable, but the scene was deeply uncomfortable, and one just had to play it for what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And posterity has been spared most of it, so there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Another movie I wanted to ask about, because it seems like you've collected a lot of incredible experiences with great directors.
Yes.
We've talked about a lot of them, Spielberg, Lewis Gilbert. I was wondering if you had any recollections of working with David Cronenberg on M. Butterfly, a movie we really love here on the podcast.
Oh, David, of course I have recollections. I admire him enormously, and he was very kind and humane to me. We started off in Toronto, and then we went to Budapest, I think. We went to Budapest, and then I think in Paris. I can't remember the order. And, David was such a witty and distinguished human being, and very kind to his actors. And when I arrived on the set, which was in Toronto, it was rather like I was reminded of Betty Davis sitting in one corner and Joan Crawford sitting in the other, in whatever happened to Baby Jane, or whichever film it was.
Yeah.
Not that I was in that, but Jeremy Irons was sitting in one corner, concentrating on his art, dear man, and not communicating very much with people. And in the other corner was sitting the delightful Chinese actor John Lone, who came to be a friend, and a good actor and a dear man. But he had an entourage, was at that time he was rather starry. And they were all flocking round, let us say, Betty Davis, while Joan Crawford was sitting in the other corner of the studio. They all got on fine. I don't think, as I remember, that Jeremy communicated very much, except in the lines, with John. I can't remember now, it's rather a long time ago. But it was a great joy working with both of them. A lot of my role was cut out in due course. The lady producer called me and said, there's been this film, Farewell, My Concubine, which runs 3.5 hours. And so we're going to have to take an hour out of ours. So I'm afraid, I said, am I totally out of it? And she said, no, not totally, but you will find your part is diminished. And indeed it was. But I had the great pleasure of working with David, and indeed with John, and indeed with Jeremy, with whom I'd worked before. And it was a great joy being part of it. But I was rather disappointed that only fleeting fragments of me were left. But that has been a regular experience of mine in films, so I've got used to it.
It does seem to be a minor trend appearing throughout this conversation of I did a lot more. But
it's true.
It's
true.
That is the reality of film.
Yeah.
That is often the way.
Well, of course,
it happened.
And if they cut the film, of course, they're not going to cut the stars. They're going to cut off the tangential players.
You might say tangential. I say it brings richness,
texture.
Well,
texture. That's what I try to bring. Yes, that's okay.
Well, I want to step away. I know we're sort of pressing for the end of the time period we've got here. So there's one thing I want to talk to you about and then two questions to wrap us up with. One thing I wanted to quickly ask about is a television show that's near and dear to my heart, one of my favorite comedies of all time. You appeared in an episode of Father Ted.
Oh, yes.
That's the reaction I was hoping for. And you got to work with the late Dermot Morgan,
Yeah.
sadly passed away just after the show
Yes.
ended. And I don't get to speak to many people that were on Father Ted. So I just wanted to ask if you sort of could spare me some thoughts about that and filming that and what it was like.
Well, most of it was delightful because the Irish actors were delightful, not least the deceased
Dermot.
Dermot, yes. There was a slight problem that concerned me. I was working with a colleague with whom I'd been at Oxford, called Patrick Kavanagh, who was a writer and a poet. He wrote. He was a journalist, and he also was a poet. And he was a very nice man. I liked him very much, but he didn't have professional reflexes as an actor, which mainly involved timing. He either didn't come in fast enough or he came in too fast, etc. And I liked him as a man, but I mean, I was so briefly in it, but it was difficult. That part of it was difficult, but the Irish contingent were enchanted.
It's a show I think more people should watch. I think it's one of the greatest comedies of all time. So I just wanted to hear. I'm glad you had some good of a time. I know Dermot.
Oh no, I was very happy to be part of it. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so two questions to wrap us up. And I know we spent the last 40 minutes waxing poetically about the spy movies you've been in. I want to hear from you, from all of those credits alongside the spy movies. What do you think is your favorite performance you've given so far in your career?
Oh, it's the next one.
I like that answer.
But I mean, it's true. I will try and answer that in a minute. But somebody asked me, "How old are you?" And I said, "It is for you to know and to find out." And she said, "What's your favorite decade?" And I said, "The next one," which it is. As far as the performances, I mean, one of the performances I'm least ashamed of is a performance I gave in a film that's hardly been seen anywhere except in Poland, which was a film called The Hostage of Europe, produced by a wonderful Jewish producer, directed by a fine Polish director called, I'm not going to try, surely. He was so important in my life, Kawalerowicz. And it was about Napoleon and Napoleon on the island of St. Helena, called The Hostage of Europe. And everybody wanted to play either Napoleon or Hudson Lowe, the British governor. They all wanted to play it. Alain Delon, Dustin Hoffman, Ben Kingsley. And Kawalerowicz said, no. Napoleon will be Roland Blanche, who's a French actor, and Hudson Lowe, the British governor, will be Vernon Dobtcheff. And he would not budge from that. So, of course, he couldn't get finance for it. Serge Silberman was the producer and finally said, I think I need to make a tax loss this year, so we'll produce that. And they did. And it's the only script I've received in which next to every shot, there was the number of feet of film allowed to be used. So it was difficult, but it was a wonderful experience. Because Kawalerowicz was a fine man and a fine director, and the Polish crew were absolutely enchanting. They're in my heart, my Polish family. We worked in Warsaw and in Lodz, which is pronounced Łódź, and later in Bulgaria, doing this film. And I think I think I was all right in that. I hope. But who has seen it? It came in. It was on in a French cinema near the Pompidou Center for 1 week, which enabled them to have it on television and things like that. It's in color film, beautifully photographed, and but they had so little money, and it needed basically it's a confrontation between Napoleon and Hudson Lowe, the British governor. But there should have been a feel about Jamestown, which is a town on the island where they were, St. Helena, and they couldn't have the extras for Jamestown. So, and the soundtrack was very impoverished. But both as a technical challenge and as a comradely experience, I feel privileged to have been part of it. And I think I'm all right in it. I don't know. If ever it comes your way.
I think, given the attitude you've had towards some of your performances, that was actually a glowing sort of evaluation of how you did on yourself.
Well,
I think that was...
I am less ashamed of it than other things.
I appreciate the self-deprecating attitude, being a Brit, so it sits well with me.
It's being practical. I worked with a delightful actress too called Catriona MacColl, who was enchanting, and who I think has had a vogue being in Italian horror films too. But no, it was a wonderful experience. And touch wood, I think I played the character, and he was given red hair, because he had red hair, and the wonderful makeup lady Teresa Tomaszewska made me a wonderful red hairpiece, and there was a scene where I got soaked because Napoleon kept me standing in the rain outside where he was. And then I went home to my wife in the film, Catriona, and she helped me take my soaking shirt off. And I said to the director, I must have red underarm hair because red-headed men do. Mm-hmm. And he said, no, you don't need that. No, you don't need it. It's not necessary. I said, but it's not true to life. I mean, you have a very good Polish actor, Daniel Obrycki, who's got red hair and red underhair. He said, Daniel Obrycki is not a good actor. I said, he is a good actor. And anyway, so we found some red powder and so on, and I had red underarm hair. But of course, when my shirt was taken off, I'd been soaked to the skin by this rain. What they saw was orange rivulets dripping from my underarms. And the director laughed and laughed and laughed. He said, what did I tell you? Anyway, that was, I'm less ashamed of that and other things. I think I'm sort of all right in the Assassination Bureau, as I remember, thanks to Basil Dearden and Diana and Telly and those other actors. Otherwise, there are one or two French films I think I'm okay in, and maybe one or two Italian ones. Yeah, there was a French film called, with Audrey Tautou, called, what was the final title? Prix de Beauté. No, it wasn't Prix de Beauté. Anyway, that maybe I'm okay in that. Let us put it no higher than that.
We'll take it.
Of which I'm least ashamed.
Okay, Vernon, this is the last question we have for you, and we'll let you go about your evening. And this has been asked to everyone that's ever been on the show, including people you've worked with, like Barbara Carrera. We talk about spy movies here on Spy Hards every week. That's what we love, is spy movies. I want to hear from you. Vernon Dobtcheff, what is your personal favorite spy movie of all time?
Oh, how interesting. Let me think. You see, my personal favorites usually are Japanese films by Ozu and Kurosawa. And I don't think they did spy movies. In fact, Ozu certainly did. Ozu certainly didn't. No. And Kurosawa didn't either. My favorite spy movie. I mean, I've watched a great many. And I've admired the skill of the actors, the skill of the director. And I have to tell you that although I feel very lucky to have been in these various films, it's not the spy movie genre is not the first thing I rush to when they appear.
Mm-hmm.
And if I watch them, it is really for the skill of the direction and of the actors and the. But the answer is, I think the answer is none of them and all of them, because I've enjoyed all of them. But a favorite, I can't think of at the moment. What is yours?
Well, myself personally, it's somewhere between North by Northwest or Notorious, both Hitchcock films, both wonderful.
Both fine films, yes.
Yeah, those ones jump to mind. I think of stuff like The Spy Who Came In From the Cold with Richard Burton.
Oh, yes, that was Richard, yes.
Came In From the Cold.
Yes.
Yeah.
No,
that's one. And some of the like the top tier Bond ones, I think Spy Who Loved Me is it's been mentioned a few times on the show by people as their favorite spy movie.
Oh, good.
But yeah, other ones like Goldfinger and Casino Royale as well.
Well, I watched Sean in all those first films, and Richard, whom I worked with 3 times, I thought he was terrific in The Spy Who Came In From the Cold. You know, a very good film. But the favorite, I don't know. It's like, who is your favorite person? There are a lot of them, but I would hesitate to choose a favorite.
I think Jane Merrow in the background there has answered your question for you and has said it's now The Spy Who Came In From the Cold. So I think she has decided for you.
Well, Jane, who is a very decisive woman and a beautiful and delightful friend, she's right that it's a terrific film. I can't honestly say it's a favorite. I've enjoyed all, and I can't think of one all-out favorite.
You'll be having tea later today, and it'll be like, there it is. I'll have to let the guys know. You can write in and let us know. But Vernon, I want to get you away for the rest of your evening. I want to thank you for spending the time with us, helping us celebrate The Spy Who Loved Me and a bunch of spy movies that you've been in. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you for deigning to interest yourself in me, a very minor fragment of a large tapestry. But it's a delight meeting you. And I tried to answer your question. Sorry about the favorite. I can't think of one. But thank you so much for your kind attention.
Oh, no. Thank you very much.
There you go. That was Vernon Dobtcheff. I am just so thrilled he had the time to talk to us. His figure was definitely hard to beat.
It definitely was. I mean, when you look at the sheer number of spy credentials this man has and how eloquently he talks about every single experience, like just a natural-born storyteller. But when it came to The Spy Who Loved Me, of course, the movie we're talking about this week, or this month, I should say.
This year.
This
decade. We're never stopping.
We're changing the name to Spy Who Loved Me Hearts.
Really rolls off the tongue, that one.
Really does. It really does. But, you know, this performance, it's a small character in a Bond film, and yet it has lingered with me since the first time I ever saw this film. And it's that look of horror that crosses his face, you know, as Jaws is about to kill him. But, like, it's one of those characters that's a minor one in the world of James Bond, but essential within that universe as well, because it's characters like Max Kalba that fill out this universe and make it this enjoyable world to visit. We get to, you know, experience every time there's a new Bond movie. They're populated with all these memorable little side characters. And like Max Kalba, I think, is a big part of Spy Who Loved Me, who's really fun, is like, what is this guy up to? It's like there's this whole little world he operates in, this like fancy restaurant setting. All of it really comes together around the character and the voice that Vernon went with, that he chose to go with, and then also like just the attire he's wearing. It's a character who just really has always stood out to me.
I think that's mostly because you wish you were him getting smooched on by Richard Kiel, right?
I mean, it wouldn't be bad. Wouldn't be bad.
No, I think that's one of the reasons why we tracked Vernon down, because, you know, it is, as you say, I mean, there are no small parts. But, you know, he is only on the screen for a brief amount of time. But seeing his death at the hands of Jaws really lends impact to what Jaws can do. But also it sort of adds to that walls closing in around Bond and Triple X, because, you know, they thought they had it. They were about to get that piece, and then it's taken away by Jaws. And then that's like an unstoppable force.
And it's also crucial in elevating the threat of Jaws.
Yeah.
Because you had the scene previous where Jaws killed Fekesh at the pyramid display. And like that one is horrifying and definitely does a great job setting up the character as scary. But when it starts to happen more in like a broad daylight setting, like here, it just makes Jaws that much scarier. Because he's not like the boogeyman who strikes at night. He could be anywhere, and he can even get you in a crowded restaurant. And I think that that's really like adds a lot to that character. It's one of those things we'll talk about when we get to Moonraker is did they do Jaws dirty in a way, removing the threat level when they made him more comedic? Because here, I really think like the way they stage the scene with Max Kalba, he's legit terrifying.
Yeah, I mean they use the sort of phone booth to its fullest extent. I mean, even that sort of like it's behind the shaded door. You don't really see the full kill. You see parts of it because it's sort of cut away in pieces of the holes in the door, which actually adds to the tension, adds to the sort of like horror of it, which I know is a mild pun based on the character. But I think it's a really effective sort of death scene. It's not one of the most overt in Bond history, but I think that's actually better for Jaws because it adds to his menace. But aside from like the death scene as well, he makes it stand out just when he's talking to Bond and Triple X when they're meant to have that meeting. And you mentioned sort of the dialogue and sort of the voice he chose to use, but it's one of those beats in the film. Like it's almost a downbeat in a way in the film. There's not a big action sequence. It's in between action sequences really, but he's allowed to add life to what is only a few lines and give you something memorable. And I'm like, if I put a picture of Max Kalba online, say like joining us next week, and then just a picture of Max Kalba, people would know exactly who we're talking about, the scene it is, the film it is. I wouldn't have to give any context because it just is one of those characters that, despite not having a lot to do or say, leaves an imprint in your mind.
No, definitely. And one of the things I thought was really interesting in this chat was him saying that originally they wanted him for a role in the film that would have shot in Egypt. And he couldn't do it because of scheduling, and so he shot on the lot for the Max Kalba scenes, obviously. But it really makes me wonder, like, it had to have been Fekesh, right? The first victim of Jaws, the one running away at the show that gets his neck bitten. Because I can't think of, like, what other character would have suited him in the Egypt material in the film.
That's the only one I could really think of. But then again, like, I would have thought Fekesh, and I think if I were to put a watch to it, Fekesh gets less time than Max Kalba.
I think so as well. But the only other characters I could really think of are like the two goons that come to attack Bond. And the one of them goes off the roof with the tie. But he would not have been playing that guy.
Well, Sandor is the bald guy you're talking about. Is the one who gets the really helpful chap.
Yeah, he wouldn't be playing Sandor, but like Sandor had someone with him.
Right.
But that's like also like a non-speaking kind of nothing role. So I don't think you would go after Vernon Dobtcheff, who is incredibly eloquent.
Maybe it was the lady.
Maybe it was. I initially had the thought of the contact who has the harem, but that was all shot obviously on the lot.
Yeah. I don't think that definitely wasn't shot in Egypt. Yeah, definitely a Pinewood shot. I mean, I don't have the books in front of me to tell you if that's true or not, but I could fairly guarantee that's true.
Yeah. It's definitely on the lot.
the only other suggestion, and by the way, folks, I'm sure you're all scratching your head, or some of you might have a suggestion as to what it could have been, or maybe there's a revision of this script. Earlier on, there was a character that was bigger. Maybe Fekesh had more time originally, and it got cut to what we have now. I wonder what it is. I think Fekesh is the only answer, but I don't know why that would be more appealing than Max Kalba.
I don't know if it was about appealing just as like they wanted him to go shoot in Egypt. Like that's just who they picked for that role. And then when he couldn't do it, they just, put him to the other one.
Well, the way he said it kind of made it feel like it was not a relegation, but a secondary consolation prize, perhaps is the word I'm looking for. Whereas I think if you were on the balance of, leaving an imprint, I think Max Kalba stays with you more than Fekesh.
I agree. Like, I think Kalba is the better role. I wonder if it was more the perk of going to Egypt to film.
That's true. That's true. And experience the dysentery that the rest of the crew were dealing with until Cubby Broccoli got out his saucepans and cooked spaghetti for everyone.
That's right. So what could have been? He could have had some spectacular spaghetti.
So, but also a great weight loss regime.
True enough. True
Yeah.
enough.
You never know. You never know. But that's a what if. And if you have a suggestion, or if you're a Bond scholar listening, a lot of people out here who listen to Spy Hards have written books about Bond, and who've been on the show, a lot of them too. If you have a suggestion, let us know. I'd be interested to sort of put it out in the next episode and hear your sort of thoughts on that.
Mhm.
And one of the other things that we got to sort of dive into, actually with a bit more of a story, was, and I didn't expect this going into it, was Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Because again, his time in the film is quite fleeting, although a lot of people do recall the hilarious tapestry scene. What you don't know is they shot a whole extensive scene where basically Harrison Ford had to carry around Vernon Dobtcheff for a few days um, as a body and put him into a sarcophagus, and none of it made the film.
No, but it definitely makes me want to go back. And I was reminded when I was editing the interview to go back and actually watch that bit from Last Crusade to look for that sarcophagus, because he said it can be spotted in the background. And the gag would be that the sarcophagus face basically matched his face.
Right. Did you spot it?
I haven't gone back. I'll do that today, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, that was I think a really fun story, and just how Harrison Ford was good humored, and could not have been more delightful to work with over the course of that experience of being dragged around by him. So that was a great story, and just hearing him talk about Steven Spielberg as a director, I always love when we have anyone on who was directed by someone who's basically considered at the top of their game. So like a Spielberg. I don't think we've talked to anyone who worked on a Tarantino film. But we have talked to people who worked on Christopher Nolan films.
Yep.
And it's always interesting to just get insight into what we on the outside view as like, well, they're clearly a genius. But what is that actually like on the set when you're being directed by them? And so Vernon being able to give us more stories about, just Spielberg and how he was so quick and like really shot the movie very fast, which, you don't really think of. You think of someone who's just obsessing over every shot. All of this is art. How do I make this, my masterpiece? And you get a sense of like, that's one of the key elements of Spielberg is he keeps everyone feeling engaged and like there's actually momentum. They're not standing around just kind of bored all day.
And also on the Spielberg front, it was interesting to hear that he was quite amenable.
Mhm.
Like you'd think someone at his level by that point, Last Crusade, wouldn't have to change schedules for people or be that adaptive for a non-lead role. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, although I wonder if it was because of the carving of the sarcophagus face.
Yeah, a little bit of a sunk cost fallacy there, I suppose. I will try and find that sarcophagus and put a photo online. I don't know how high res the photos out there would be. I'll do my best, but it'd be interesting to see if you can kind of see Vernon in the sarcophagus.
Yes. It was also delightful to hear him recreate his pronunciation of Mickey Mouse in the interview as well.
Yes. I wonder. I don't know if I actually asked him this, or it got cut in the end. But like, I do wonder what he is often. Like, is it just tapestries he shouted out more often, or is it Mickey Mouse?
I think Mickey Mouse was the one that he said is the
Right.
one that's more popular, yeah.
That's interesting. I would have thought tapestries. I guess that's more Indy's line than his, though.
It is, yeah. Like I think that one is more of an indie comedic moment, whereas like Mickey Mouse is very, very broad.
What's the complete line? If you're a Scottish lord, then I'm Mickey Mouse.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it was just nice to dive into that. I wasn't expecting sort of as much detail when it came to Last Crusade. I actually thought there would have been more for Bond, but it seemed because of the sort of delays and that extra couple of days shooting him being bodied around by Harrison Ford, ended up having way more to talk about with Last Crusade. But what did you want to bring up, Cam?
Him talking about Day of the Jackal was really interesting to me. To hear about filming that rather unpleasant torture scene, and how it was supposed to be much longer than what we saw in the finished film, where it's relatively brief, very effective, but very brief. And him saying that like it was quite a bit longer and there was a lot more torture going on. And just hearing him talk about like Fred Zinnemann as a director and how incredibly skilled he was, but also that like you watch that scene and you could just feel how unpleasant that room is in terms of the heat, and it just feels like like you would not want to be in that room. And there's a lot of films where there's rooms like that and the actors say, yeah, it was miserable in there.
Ironically, that's exactly the room I'm recording in right now.
But yeah, there's a lot of times where actors will say, no, the room was miserable. Like they wanted it to be kind of hot so that we would feel it, on set.
Sure.
Right? Like we to really help our characters. Whereas like Vernon was like, no, it was fine. So it just shows you like kind kind of the magic going on and how Fred Zinnemann had such a handle on kind of tone and atmosphere in that film. And because that scene is incredibly impactful, and it's just a, small scene in a, over 2 hour movie with a lot of things happening in it. But, just really great to hear someone talk about shooting a key scene from that movie, because I don't think we've ever talked to anyone who worked on Day of the Jackal before.
I don't think so. Maybe there might have been someone who had a small part in it too that we've discussed and maybe not asked them about it in the past.
Yeah, maybe.
That's entirely possible because we're idiots.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is a film that we both hold near and dear to our hearts. So it was nice to get those sort of stories. And speaking of spy movies that we hold near and dear to our heart, I couldn't let the opportunity pass
Yeah.
than to have another Condorman conversation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think I'm running out of people I can get on the show now for Condorman conversations. There's one man who I'm still trying to get who wore a big yellow suit, and I'd love to have him. I'm just going to put that energy out there. I've emailed enough people, and it's not happening. But if you know someone who knows him, Michael Crawford, let's make it happen. But yeah, Vernon was briefly in Condorman, and didn't have much to say about the production of the film, but did actually work with Michael Crawford on some Mothers Do Have 'Em. So we've got a couple of fun stories out of that.
Yeah, about how Michael Crawford would basically try to make him laugh in scenes or make the other actors laugh, and so Vernon had to fake being sick and just be like, "Oh, hey, I'm really sick. Can we just shoot this really quickly?" And so Michael Crawford was like, "Yeah, okay, we'll just do it that way." And that was how he basically got one over on Michael Crawford.
That's the same manic energy that he puts into every scene in Condorman.
It really is, isn't it? He's just like flopping around on the ground like a fish
He is.
every second of the day when they're shooting.
Whenever we finally get to interview him, I'll start off by saying I'm feeling really sick and see if he just takes it into a really serious interview for some reason.
Do you think Michael Crawford is aware of the cult popularity of Condorman?
I'll stop you there. Whoa, Cammy. I think you're confusing the cult of Spy Hards for cult status for a film. I think we talk about it a lot. I honestly don't think the conversation for Condorman is all that busy online, apart from us and the wonderful people of the Spy Hards audience.
I was going to say, we've had a lot of people along the way reference that film.
Yeah.
As being, influential to them, especially when they saw it at a young age. So I know there's people out there that love Condorman. They wouldn't be putting references to Condorman in Pixar shorts if there wasn't some sort of cult fandom around it. But I'm just curious because Michael Crawford has had such a legendary stage career.
Yeah.
And then obviously other British TV shows that were very popular. Does he even register Condorman as a thing, or is it kind of oh, that one-off movie I did that I kind of don't remember that well?
I suspect on the sort of I started off the show by using the phrase curriculum vitae. I'll use it again. It's not something that people often throw at him because people will often go to Some Mothers Do Have 'Em or Phantom of the Opera or something like that, which is what he's famous for.
Of course.
So no, I don't think he gets it very often. And I also think that the legacy of Condorman is kind of buried because of Disney.
Yeah.
It's hard for it to get that pop culture status. You take another film that is buried, like The Rocketeer. That was far bigger than Condorman.
Right.
And that wasn't successful at all. And even that has spawned an animated spin-off and stuff. But people aren't talking about The Rocketeer they're talking about The Rocketeer more than Condorman, I would say.
100%.
I just don't think that there is enough conversations about Condorman because I think Disney want it that way.
And you would think if ever Condorman was going to get a boost to his public presence, it would be in the wake of the popularization of superhero movies.
Yeah.
Being such a force.
Yeah.
That at the very least, Disney would say, hey, why don't we do a new Condorman comedy?
Or an animated Condorman or something.
Sure. Something out there, even if it's a Disney Plus only kind of thing, just to
sure.
be able to have some wacky superhero content that maybe kids would enjoy.
Well, I think it would work best as an animation. I think you've got you fold in the spy stuff and the sort of fantastical powers that he seems to get, and you get the Condor car and all that sort of stuff. I think it would work a lot better in animation. You could maybe even get Michael Crawford to voice it if you wanted to, or you'd hand down the powers to someone else or whatever. The only other thing that Disney have done over the years is they did show the costume at D23, I think, one year.
Okay. Yeah.
In their sort of museum area, but that's really it. And I have to think maybe that's also just to do with demand. Like, I know we talk about it a lot, and I make jokes that Disney are trying to silence us as Condor fans, but I wonder, like, how many people are making stink online about Condorman opposed to other films that have been vaulted by Disney.
Sure. And with every passing year, fewer and fewer, I would think, are making complaints.
Yeah. But, one of these days I'll just go big with it. I'll make a big old petition to get Condorman released and go get us 10,000 signatures or something and present it to old Walt himself in his grave. Or in his cryo chamber under Disneyland.
Hey, I've taken a tour of Disney studios, and I will not confirm or deny that such a place exists.
Well, isn't that saucy?
Mm.
Is there anything else you want to bring up? I've got one more thing.
I just was interested to hear him talk about Oliver Reed
Sure.
on Assassination Bureau and a couple other experiences along the way, because obviously Oliver Reed
Technically Condorman as well, like, there's a
Yeah.
connection there.
didn't work together on that movie, but just talking about like how delightful it was to work with Oliver Reed on set, and how Oliver Reed, obviously his offstage antics were pretty well known, but how professional he was, on camera, because sometimes the legend overrules what was probably a pretty professional dude, given the sheer number of credits and the good filmmakers he worked with.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things that, like, the mystique of Oliver Reed probably overpowered the work of Oliver Reed. But
Yeah.
anyone who worked with him would be like, oh no, that's a damn good actor. Or anyone that watched him in films would be like, that's a damn good actor.
Yeah.
But you tend to see the press more than anything else. And that will color, especially people who aren't watching his films and just read things about him online post his death. You would think he was a raging alcoholic, and that was basically, and he wasn't able to make films. But basically, throughout almost his entire career, he was working.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And actually, worked with David Cronenberg, who was referenced in this interview as well, because Oliver Reed worked with him on The Brood. But you had, Vernon talking about working on M. Butterfly here as well, playing an agent in stuff that was heavily cut down.
yeah.
But talked about his friendship with John Lone. And, we obviously talked to, the creator of M. Butterfly, but we haven't really talked to actors who've worked on the film.
No, and one of the things that, again, it's quite an academic discussion post the interview, but it's interesting because the chap has got such a diverse career. Like I said it on his intro, I think I'll go back and get the number again. 379 credits on IMDb.
Yeah.
That's just in acting. If you go to the other sections of producing and things like that, even more. And the guy is still working. I mean, just recently he was in the Netflix show The Witcher. Like, he's still firing on all cylinders. And we're talking 50 years post The Spy Who Loved Me, which wasn't even the start of his career.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is a man who's past the 90 mark
Yeah.
in age and could not have been more spry. I think you'll probably be astounded at his memory when you listen to this interview.
Mhm.
I mean, I certainly was. Just his ability to recall all the names of everyone he'd ever worked with was incredible. And Scott and I have talked, personally, and then also I think the odd time on air too, about like seeing William Shatner at panels. And William Shatner's in his 90s,
Yeah.
and is sharp as a tack
Yeah.
and full of energy, and you just kind of go like, how is this possible? And that's how I felt with Vernon. So when he says like his best role that he'll ever do is his next one, I'm like, yeah, I think he's got more, left in him.
Yeah. And we were talking to his manager before this all got set up. And one of the things that he said to me was like, Vernon is a real, like, a real storyteller. Like, he knows his stuff. And I was like, okay, sure. But like, he's in his 90s. So I'd sort of prepared for someone who was sort of, in his 90s and was acting like someone in their 90s. And I think he has better recall than I do.
He puts us both to shame. He should host this show.
He should. He's been in more spy movies than us.
Yeah, he has more credentials than we'll ever have, so there you go.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for someone to write us into their spy movie as like two guys that get blown up in the background.
One day, dare to dream.
One dare to dream, indeed. But there you go. That's the second SpyMaster interview in the bag. The celebration of The Spy Who Loved Me, July Who Loved Me, continues next week. Cam, I'll throw it to you, sir. Who are we talking to?
We are talking to Mr. Garrick Hagen, who you will know best as Biggs Darklighter in the original Star Wars, the ill-fated X-Wing pilot taken down by Darth Vader at the end of the big trench battle sequence. But He also, that same year, played a crewman on the USS Wayne in The Spy Who Loved Me. And he's going to have stories about working with Roger Moore, that set, and just like being part of the Bond universe. There's some really great details here, and I think you're going to enjoy Garrick Hagen.
Yeah, I hope you are too. And it's interesting because when you read someone's credit for a film and it's like USS Wayne crewman, you easy to just sort of dismiss and be like, oh well, he's not done much in the film. You got to remember though, this guy was in the submarine set the entire time,
Mm-hmm.
and also in the submarine pen, the Liparus set, and in the jail cells. So all of those scenes, the big shootout scene, the big brawl, that's all him. And we've got plenty of stories about that. But also, like the guy has a few other spy credits to his name as well that we'll get into. I won't talk too much about it. I'll leave it for then. You can have a look at him in the meantime and look him up. But much like Vernon, Garrick has had his fair share of spy movies.
Yes, yes, and some real surprise ones that going into this, I think when you booked it, I wasn't aware of, and then it was like, oh wow, more to ask about here. There's
Yeah.
some great stuff.
Absolutely. So continue on the journey with us as we keep celebrating The Spy Who Loved Me and we sit down with Mr. Garrick Hagen. Promises to be quite the time. And I teased it earlier this month. We might have something special we're cooking up for later in the week, next week as well. I'll leave that there. It's brewing, and I don't want to ruin it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes.
But join us next week as we sit down with Garrick Hagen talking all about The Spy Who Loved Me, Mission Impossible, Spy Game, and much, much more. If you want to help support the show, if you've been enjoying July Who Loved Me, you want to support us on our 5th birthday, you want to give us a birthday present, you certainly can. Come and join us over on our Patreon, patreon.com/spyhards. Over 100 bonus episodes. If you add in everything you've got on the free main feed here, there'd be 500 Spyhards episodes for you to listen to. And that's a lot of spying.
It is indeed, yes.
You can certainly carry on spying. And don't forget to join us over on social media. We'll be talking about The Spy Who Loved Me all this month. And all this week, we'll be talking about Vernon Dobtcheff and his contributions to spy movies, including The Spy Who Loved Me. I'm sure there'll be the odd clip of him being eaten by Jaws, because why wouldn't you use that?
I mean, when in Rome.
And I'm sure the picture of Cam also being attacked by Richard Keel will be published.
Oh, that one? Yeah. I can definitely throw that one out there for sure.
Yeah. So, all to play for. But until next week, folks, Cam and I are off to raid the vaults of Disney to try and find the husk of Walt Disney and revive Condorman.